Afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday meeting of the BOCC. Couple things on agenda today. Developmentally disabled is where we're going to start, so we'll just get going.
Hey, thank you. Gina James, Health and Human Services. I had on my list to just circle back with the board and have some discussion about a couple items related to our developmental disabilities contracts. So we saw these contracts not too long ago, and there was some questions at that time about the diagnoses involved and what that looks like. So I wanted to bring some of that information back. And then also revisit there was a school to work contract that we had talked about a little bit and some questions about that. So I wanted to bring back some of that information as well. There's copies right here of a couple PowerPoint slides I have put together. So one of the questions that came up when we were reviewing the developmental disabilities contracts for the adult employment program, there was a question about the diagnoses involved. So we looked at in our adult employment program, we currently have about 69 adults enrolled in the employment program. And what I have for you is a breakdown of where they fall. And so when the information that we have, it places individuals in terms of their diagnosis in these 5 sort of buckets of diagnoses. So you see them listed there on the left. There's the intellectual disability, which can include a number of more specific diagnoses like Down syndrome, fetal alcohol syndrome, genetic conditions, or birth defects. So it kind of encompasses a number of those types of diagnoses. We can't necessarily see that specific diagnosis in the data that we have. When DDA is doing their eligibility, it gets put into sort of one of these categories, and that's what we're able to see.
Could you tell me where, or please tell me, these are data that you fished out of our pool of history, or this is from your research with the...
It's from we have access to it's a DDA operated database that we have access to because we do the authorizations for services. And so we can, when we're doing our work, we can see what category individuals are plugged into. We can't drill down more than that, but that's what we are able to see.
So in diseases, there oftentimes are really ambiguities, like another neurological condition. They're saying, let me back up. Intellectual disability and autism. There's no clear line between that, is there? I mean, even autism is hard to define.
Yeah, and I'm not a professional in diagnosing these things, so I'm can't speak very well to that. What I'll say is I know that as part of the eligibility process, the appropriate individual makes those diagnoses. That is verified. Establishing the diagnosis is one piece. Sort of the second step in terms of DDA services is looking also at IQ level and an adaptive functioning assessment. And that's where they're looking at, okay, what is the individual able to do in their daily living? Are they able to shower? Are they able to dress? Are they able to feed themselves? Are they able to communicate? Are they able to move independently? Those types of things. So there's that functioning assessment that's factored in as well. And you've heard me talk about low, medium, and high acuity. And that's these assessments, the scores on these assessments is what determines if someone is then either a low acuity, medium acuity, or high acuity. low meaning a lower level of support, and high meaning a higher level of support is required. So those are the pieces that go into determining kind of the eligibility and where individuals fall. And this is just kind of an overview of what the adults in the employment program are falling right now. Off to the right, in the box where it says low, medium, and high, that's where those 69 individuals are falling. So 10% are low acuity, 53% are medium acuity, and 25% are high acuity.
So this is adults only, so there's a fair amount of history that leads to the diagnosis.
Yes, but for DDA services, that diagnosis has to have happened before they turn 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
I always question the data because it's really hard to, I don't want to stigmatize someone with the diagnosis that says they're stupid, like Albert Einstein got kicked out of 8th grade or something like that because it was too slow for them. So is there any follow-up on these diagnoses such that we know we got 78% now of the adults in this category?
Mm-hmm.
How did any of those in that category fall out of it afterwards? Is it? Yeah.
So, and some of these diagnoses we know, and we often talk about this with autism. It's a spectrum of kind of what happens. So you could, I don't like to label people either, but you say that someone has autism, it could look very different. Two people with autism could look very different. And that's factored in as well. DDA does annual assessments annual
assessments of the same population?
Right, of the clients that are currently enrolled in service. So they do annual assessments to determine if anything has changed with their level of support. I think more often we see that a support level goes up versus goes down. As individuals get older and whatnot, they might need a higher level of support as things change.
Are there explanations for that?
Well, I think when you look at the populations who have these types of disabilities, tend to age, I don't know if this is going to make sense, age at a younger age.
Yeah.
They
age quicker.
Be careful,
Yeah.
you might hurt my feelings.
And so during those assessments, they're looking for those pieces that might determine if they are in need of a different type of support based on how they're doing and aging and in every other, aspect. So I don't know that I've seen a lot of them go down or up in terms of the diagnoses and their level of support needed. We do see the hours, their authorized hours change a little bit depending on situations. So sometimes that does change, but with these particular things, there's not usually a lot of movement with.
One of the reasons to ask this is we know that if you're an athlete but you don't practice, you eventually lose ground. And the mind is not too unlike that. The world-class chess players, they're immersed in chess books and all that kind of stuff. They're exercising all the time. And when we tell someone or we limit the sky above them, I think that will always tend to drive somebody down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I think, having individuals with disabilities in employment,
that should drive it up.
That's a drive up. Yeah. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So I just wanted to bring back some of this information because it was a question that came up before related to the school to work contract, I wanted to kind of start and backtrack a little bit about how School to Work came about. So there was a bill that passed in the 2022 legislative session. It was Senate Bill 5790. And it ended up in RCW for the School to Work program. And so what it says in the RCW is the Department of Social and Health Services. So the state's is required to establish a School to Work program in all counties in the state to work with all students with intellectual and developmental disabilities, with the goal of the program to connect students with supported employment services. So this is kind of how this contract came to us because of the legislation and that it was codified in RCW. So the state has been working then to try to meet this requirement for the program. So we were sent a contract. The contract is with the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. So not with DDA like our other contract, it's with DVR. And so they're working to roll out a School to Work program statewide. One of the questions that came up before was, how many students are we talking about and how many are we missing right now in employment services? I looked back, we were able to pull data from the last 5 years. So what it shows you for each year is DDA enrolled students who have graduated. So we see anywhere from 15 to 20 students or so graduating who are enrolled in DDA services when they graduate high school. The third column over shows that how many are currently, as of last month, enrolled in adult employment services. So there's just a handful that are currently enrolled. And then on the far right, it shows, how many are not enrolled. So you can see the majority of those transition students who have graduated are not enrolled in the adult employment services. So those are the numbers. That's the students that aren't.
Do we infer that they're essentially unemployed, or they no longer needed the service?
They could either be unemployed, they could be employed, but not able to access the support that they may or may not need. If they are eligible for DDA, my guess is some level of support might be beneficial to be successful on the job, but depending on situation.
So when does DDA take over? I mean, I have a person, and she was telling me about her son is in YES program through the school. And she was saying 136 students within the ESD, not just Cowlitz County. So, and they can start as early as 14 in that. So then what's considered an adult? Is it 18 or when they actually, or is it 21 or,
Yeah.
Where's that kick?
So for the DDA employment services can start at age 21 or when they're done with their high school program, when they graduate high school. So sometimes students will turn 21 when they're still finishing their last year of school. And in that case, they wouldn't be eligible for these adult employment services until they're graduated from high school.
Okay. And then she referred to a STEP program for 18 to 21-year-olds.
Yeah, so
28 of them in Cowlitz County.
that could be, yeah, the next.
Well, how's that relate to this one here?
Yes, so the next slide, I actually have a little bit of information about both of those programs.
Okay. All right.
And so we have two existing.
But going back to the earlier slide, or can we go back to it later after you continue your trend of response?
Whichever, I'm good with either way.
That's fine.
The numbers trouble me because I don't know what it is I should conclude out of that. Just showing me the number, I see I did see the numbers at one point. But most of them aren't involved in the adult program, and I don't know, should I infer that we had positive graduation or we have negative graduation? And so we spent all this time and we really didn't accomplish anything because top line 19 are not enrolled anymore. So maybe I find them out in the homeless camps.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know, what these particular situations are. I just know that are enrolled in DDA and they've
Right, I understand.
graduated. Yeah.
Doesn't that surprise you? I mean, it looks like there's a message in there, but I don't know what it is.
Well, yeah, it's tough to know. Maybe the parents, while their kids were in school, they had them and then when they're out, maybe, I don't know, the child doesn't work or they just
Yeah.
have them at home
Yeah. And to be honest, some individuals as adults, when they're done with school, might not want to work. That's always, that could be a case. One of the things I'll point out, and it kind of ties into Commissioner Dahl's questions about these other programs, the transition programs that are here now, they do have the goal of helping students get to a place of being prepared for employment. But the population they serve in those programs is the individuals have to be able to work independently. And so there's not a lot of, there's not paid supports attached to these particular programs. So part of the eligibility to get into these programs is that students need to be able to function more independently. And so there's not a program to assist with individuals who are on more of the medium and high acuity level that may need that higher level of support to be successful in obtaining and maintaining a job for employment. So I don't know if that's something to think about when we look at these numbers too, is that it could be that the individuals that are enrolled in employment maybe did go through one of these other programs and they're a lower acuity and were able to access the program and get employed and continue on in that route. And maybe some of the ones that missed are medium or higher acuity and needed more supports that is not available right now until after they graduate.
and it wasn't clear that every school participated.
Correct.
in
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. I've heard that as well. Yeah. So I highlighted some of the components of the existing transition programs, the YES program and the STEPS, and they do have certain age groups that they work with. They both sort of focus on job training and readiness. It's help with that kind of preparation work to help students. I think I mentioned that they need to be able to work independently. And can have limited number of participants. And for some, I can't remember which one or if it's both, kind of their capacity is ESD wide, not necessarily Cowlitz County or limited to our area. A couple of differences with these existing programs and the school to work program is it serves students who are DDA eligible only. I think some of these existing programs also serve students who are on an IEP and it might be behavior related or something like that. So there's kind of a difference there as well. And I already mentioned it serves students with higher support needs. So the medium and higher acuity clients would be a good fit for the school to work program because they're not eligible necessarily for the existing programs. The other component to school to work is that it engages the employment service provider before the student is graduating. And when I talk about that, it's really the adult services, the adult employment services have the employment providers, the job coaches that are able to provide on the job support for individuals. What the school to work program is really doing is bringing that same service down to a lower age it's kind of opening it up to a lower age group. So it's focused on that last year of high school. It can start at 20 to 21 while they're still finishing that last year of school, to get engaged with an employment provider and to help get them employed and looking at employment as they're exiting, graduating high school during that time. I think in terms of overlap with these other two programs, there's certainly a little bit of overlap there. And our goal would be to look at how we work together and coordinate with the existing programs. And because School to Work is focused on that last year, there can be a lot of work done if individuals are in those other programs that those programs can do that could carry over and help the School to Work piece, be ready, a little bit more ready. And that student might be a little bit more ready to then get right into employment instead of doing the preparation work first. So those are a few differences there. So I had mentioned what we've received first is called the program development contract. The purpose of that contract is to just develop and implement a School to Work program. So some of that work is, talking to these other transition programs, coordinating that effort, creating application materials, that type of thing, working with the schools and the students, getting information out, really just kind of setting up how that would look like for students to get enrolled in the program and what it looks like moving forward. The second piece is a direct service contract, which would look similar to our existing adult employment contract. It would be connected to eligible students for service hours, and it would just pay for that support, that direct support similar to our adult program. So that would be the direct service contract that we would anticipate down the road after there's been some program development and implementation. So that's kind of what the direction is going at this point. So I just wanted to bring some of this information back, have some more conversation, and I'm happy to ask more questions, get more information, look at some other pieces depending on what the board's interest is on this.
It's like we do a lot of contracts with the state. It's another pass-through type thing. I mean, they're funding, and then if the business is higher, they get reimbursed through this contract.
Yeah, the direct service contract will look like that. The program development contract would just be a contract with the county and wouldn't pass through down. And it's, like I mentioned, it's to sort of develop the program. And so we anticipate that will drop off, when the program is set up, and then there would just be the direct service with the pass-through piece like we see now.
So the first one says, yeah, we as a county want to try and figure out this gap and do something for it. And then once we figure that out, then that goes away.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's partly.
And the second one would be, okay, you've identified what we think needs to be done. Here's funding for it.
Right.
Is that fair?
Yeah, it would be, we've talked to the partners and stakeholders, figured out how this could look in our community and how it would function. And then we would be ready. We feel like we're ready to provide the service, and then it would be just the pass through. So I know a question came up before too about whether we would ask about hiring a staff to do some of this work. And at this point, we wouldn't be looking at hiring a staff, partly because it's a short term, there's some upfront work, but then that piece kind of drops off and it's more routine, like we do now with the adult employment program. So I wouldn't look at hiring someone for this particular piece, because it's a temporary kind of upfront work, and then it's more routine after that.
I always wonder why, well, I think I somewhat know why. These people up there, why they just don't amend the programs we currently have, but they need a whole new bill. And to me, it's chasing governor's pins. When you get a bill, you get to sit with the governor, get a picture taken, and get a pin. And some of them are just chasing pins. I'd rather they chase erasers, but they chase pins. It's always difficult for me, and my colleague expresses this quite often, when you start a new program, as to where it's going to go. And
Well, and we could go through this process of doing the program development piece and decide this isn't a good fit here, or, this is working well how it is. That could always be something that happens down the road, is like, this isn't exactly what we anticipated or how we think it should go, but, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I count heavily on your guidance on these things. I have to admit, I'm confused very often. There's stuff here I just simply don't understand. And I recount the number of times that I've asked people involved in the programs, and you can get them all on one side. You get some on one side, some on the other. My favorite story there is talking to someone involved with Head Start and LCC, and they were a 10-year employee in the system, and they got 19 families in the morning, 19 families in the afternoon, and a whole new set of families every year. When I asked them, did you keep in touch with some of them? Some. I said, do you think you were doing any good? And something like that. And I said, well, can you put a number on that? And if I'm gracious, I'll say they came up with the number 2 out of 380. And we plunked in $300,000 of behavioral health tax into that. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, how can I go to that taxpayer and say, I spent your dollars fruitfully on your behalf? Just too difficult for me to do that.
yeah. It's yeah. I'm like my colleague, I depend on you a lot. And if I'm not going to sit here and quabble if we're going to investigate that, if we have a need. Because I also believe, and my colleague touched on a little bit, I think if you don't expect these people to grow, or you don't keep giving them things they can do, then they're just going to waste away. And I think they want to do things. So if we are missing some and not giving some opportunities, I'm always open to seeing if we're doing that. If what this initial contract is going to try and tell us, or if we have a gap that we can easily help with, I'm okay exploring that.
The only objection I have to that is I've grown allergic to the word gap, not only because it's hard for me to say, but because that's how a seed about which you had spoken before starts, and then the programs just spawn and spawn. And when I saw that 20 and 21-year-old, I was like, oh my God, how about the 16 to 17-year-old program, and so forth. And each program begets a whole new set of rules. And who writes the rules? Well, you got to have staff to do that. And you go blah, 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 blah. And we end up in society compartmentalizing a lot of things, and basically, I don't think that's a fruitful approach.
But, and I don't disagree with that. That's what I'm saying. I think sometimes they do these, they just, instead of just expanding what you have and adjusting
Yeah.
what you have, they write whole new
Yeah,
things, and it makes no sense to me.
yeah.
And
Counties have been urging for the state to consider just dropping the age, the adult
Yeah.
employment is at 21. So why don't we just drop that down to 16, like the legal working age, and have that be the eligibility age, but instead
Yeah.
it's happened through this separate bill.
yeah, they're all separate. Why can't you have an overriding and say we have, well, I'll just use the words they already use. Under the yes portion of it, we deal with the 14-year-olds or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Instead of
Mhm.
all these different things, because my colleague's right. Once the department starts, it never ends.
Yeah.
And by the way, no, not to scare you off, but I would love it if in your work you would be able to point out how very beneficial things are in a believable way. I jump up and hug you, and that's where you might not want that. But and so I'm not opposed to the program development contract, but I think we ought to be our own strongest critics of a program.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. And
Yeah.
one of the pieces we'll look really closely at, as we've already kind of been diving into a little bit, is the existing programs and how they would work together.
Yeah.
So we're not duplicating or overlapping anywhere, but they can just complement, and one can pick up where the other one drops off. And
Using the LCC story I gave, there are two parts to it. The part I explained is we wasted the money. The other part is what could we have done with the money? So those are typically opportunity costs, and that if you don't know the truth, you're wasting all kinds of money, even with good intent. And I think if people really were pressed, they'd say, well, I really want results. I really want to help people. I don't want to hinder them. I don't want to enslave them. I don't want to do any of those things. Well, then you got to look at it. What is it that your actions are doing?
Mhm.
Yeah. And I have confidence in you that'll happen. And I said it yesterday. I don't like chasing money. I like chasing solutions, and that should be our primary motive here is
Mhm.
solve a problem.
Mhm.
I like your chasing erasers too.
I think if I find any legislature actually deleting bills, I think maybe I'll give them a Rick eraser and engrave their name on it, send it to them.
Use a Dremel tool so you can
Well, I'm
erase
not very
faster.
good at that. I might have somebody more skilled to do that for me.
Well, they put erasers at the end. Back in the old days when we didn't, erasers, they automated that. It was just like a Dremel tool, and it was an eraser on the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not old enough to remember that.
So did we help you at all? I think we're
Yeah, I think so.
saying
So
we're
I'll
okay.
get the program development contract ready and bring that back in front of the board.
Okay.
Okay, I appreciate the conversation. Thank you.
We appreciate your time. Sheriff. We're about to give her a nameplate. I know.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah. After yesterday, she's becoming a real estate broker, so we'll probably have to start paying commission at some point in time.
Anyway, well, good afternoon, commissioners. I know a couple of days ago, I sent each of you individually an email updating you on the status of
Yeah.
Sheriff's Office taking over animal control. And this is the one of the loose ends we're wrapping up, and has to do with sheltering of animals. The agreement before you is from the Humane Society. It's something that over the last probably couple of months, myself, David Berger from the Prosecuting Attorney's Office, the chiefs of police of Longview, Kelso, Castle Rock, and Woodland. And
Kelso passed theirs last night.
they did, yeah. And their city attorney and Longview city attorney have all been involved in this process back and forth with the Humane Society. And we've all arrived at the, I guess, the same point. And big issue is the cost per animal that's would be taken there. So what we've arrived at is $300 per animal. And if there's a litter of kittens or puppies, it'd be $300 for the mother, and then $100 for each of the unweaned puppies or kittens that they take in. So that's the sheltering piece of it. And as you know, mentioned, explained in the email to you, we are standing up a temporary shelter for animals, and hopefully we'll be able to use that to reunite people with their animals before we have to take them over to the Humane Society and pay $300.
Save us the $300.
That's certainly the intent of that.
Yeah.
And I got to commend Maureen Fox at the jail. I reached out to her. Originally thought it would be a good trustee program. She identified a space, a fenced yard that would be good for that. And currently having trustees is kind of they really don't have a program right now due to most of the people that would qualify or getting released from jail. So they don't have long-term minimum security folks there. That previously she'd had a program with chickens, a chicken coop and some gardens. That's now currently isn't in operation. She hopes to reactivate that, but maybe in the future she may have a trustees that would participate in the care of the animals. But right now we're the actual Public Works is over there paving today, paving the slab in a side yard, and we have a 10 by 20 foot shed we're bringing in. And Brent Harris, our deputy, he's a former canine officer. He's kind of jumped in and helping me with this, and he identified some used kennels on Facebook Marketplace, and he's picking up his 4 kennels today for $250. We're trying to get it up and running and do it affordably as possible.
Well, I know this just kind of got dumped on you, and I appreciate you taking it. But I feel pretty positive that this might be better than what we've had in the past. I think it has some of that potential. I think we're going to have more actual people out there, aren't we? The county's going to have 2, and I think Kelso has one, and Longview has one.
Longview's going to have 2, so that
Longview's going to have 2, so we're actually going to have, seems to me, better coverage.
Yeah, the Humane Society was staffed at 4, but here recently they've lost 2. So the 2, actually the current employees who we're hiring, we had them in yesterday. The 2 of them are covering the entire county right now. So come January 1, they'll be responsible for that incorporated area. So I think we'll be able to have more effective coverage and patrols and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I can only add enthusiasm onto that, and I like the interaction with the jail or Marin. Animals have a curative effect on humans. If I had any concerns was I just don't know how expensive it is for the Humane Society. I don't want us to bleed them, and I have no idea whether 300 is a good number or not, but it's an acceptable number, at least from my standpoint. I wouldn't want the Humane Society to go under as a consequence of our actions, but I don't want them to be profligate either.
Yeah, well, the numbers are kind of all over the board for different shelters. I know that Clark County has a similar plan per animal, a similar amount. And I know Darren had gone on, there's a university somewhere had a website, do a calculator, and if we originally arrived at, I think, $326 an animal, and we negotiated down from that. Lewis County, for example, has a county supported animal shelter. And when they take animals in from the public or the cities, it's on a limited basis. They only charge $75 per animal that come in the door.
Yeah.
So I guess that remains kind of I guess on both sides of this Humane Society and us, kind of a experiment to see how it all shakes out.
That's what I was going to add. I mean, we got a plan in place, but it's something we haven't done before. So I expect that there'll be tweaks and adjustments as we go along.
And along those lines, I've been remiss in pouring through the contract. I'm assuming our PAs went through it, but there's nothing in here that binds us for longer than 12 months.
That's correct.
Yeah. And we can, if in 6 months we learn something, we can negotiate again.
Yeah, there's a termination clause and
yeah.
in short term. I know the cities have already, in part of our discussions, may be interested in putting out a request for proposals, see if there's somebody else out there who'd want to take on the sheltering and what that would look like. So
Oh,
may have
I
that, may
see.
have that discussion.
Yeah, I may be improperly thinking, but the Humane Society has it in its name. And I wouldn't want to turn it into a business. I mean, some things just aren't a business in my book. I know it's a bit strange of me.
Anyway, I think we're good with this.
I'm good
contract.
with this,
I'm
yeah.
absolutely, yeah. I just will reiterate, I just appreciate your work on it and your coordinating all that effort.
Yep.
Well, thank you. It's, yeah, well, I'm sure we'll be in touch with you during the course of the year if anything changes drastically. And I do have an original copy. I don't know, did you want that, Kelly, do you need that or?
Yeah, I think you need to move for a motion
Okay.
to approve it, and then we can get it on the consent agenda.
Okay.
Hey, I feel important now.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt and approve the contract for animal shelter services as has been presented by Brad Thurman, our sheriff.
Okay. We have a motion. Any questions, comments? See none, I don't see any hands. Call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And-
Don't go away.
Okay.
Did you want to bring up a topic?
I had one other thing. I just wanted to let you know that we're in the works with actually with Gina and Columbia Wellness, our behavioral health unit. We were staffed at 4. We lost one here in November to Kaiser, and another one's going to the juvenile probation department in January. So we're gonna have 2. And for a number of reasons, I know there's it's kind of a tough market to hire people, and looking at the program and certainly the comments of the board here a month or so ago, what we're proposing and going to bring forward here in a week or 2 to use to run with 2 people in our behavioral health unit. And with the staff, and we've been running, been working 4 10-hour days, covering 7 days a week. The 2 remaining folks are willing to go to a 5-day-a-week schedule. So we're going to propose Monday through Friday program where there'd be 2 of them working together. And then if our deputies have issues, they can refer them to them during working hours. So that's going to be a
Appreciate that.
proposal that.
I really do appreciate that. And one other topic in the rest area.
Yes.
I copied you on that email. I think the CCSO is going to have a pretty good view of what's useful and important in far out areas like that. So I sent an email to Jessica. I'd like to see a contract because I don't know what it entails for us to do. The timeliness is an issue, and there may be other issues of which I'm unaware, but you're 100% in support of that.
Yeah, I think it's important to have that. It's a highly used facility, particularly in the summer and on weekends. And it's kind of I guess I said, a chance to make a good first impression on people visiting the area and tourists in the area.
All kinds of benefits.
We close that up,
it'll get vandalized.
It'll get vandalized and destroyed.
So I think the plans right now are we can get something in, right?
Well, there was a date in there, I believe, at the end of the year.
I thought it was end of this month.
Yeah, the contract ends with, why the Port of Woodland ever got involved in maintaining that is beyond me, but they were, but yeah, I think the intention is to mothball it and board it up here towards the end of the month.
Yeah.
In Cougar, about 20 years ago, a building, a rest area, it's a rest area, nothing fancy, was built. I'm not sure the source of the funding, but it was owned by Pacific Corps, and they had a contract with the Port of Woodland to maintain it, sanitation, I guess, and restock supplies. And it's kind of a nice area. There's maps and tourist information, and there's a grassy area. I think there's some picnic tables in there. So it's your traditional, nothing more fancy than your roadside rest area. But the Pacific Corps is, yes, ending their contract. Port of Woodland doesn't want to maintain it anymore, so they intend to shut it down. And it's kind of a big meeting spot for people that come in to recreate in the Cougar area. And if it's not maintained, it's probably going to be vandalized, broken into. And
well, the nice thing about that is up there, the 2 service stations, your little store places, they don't have it. It's kind of the only public one.
Well, my understanding actually that the same person owns both of the stores now.
Oh,
And but they intend, I guess, if they don't already, you're gonna put out a porta potty in each store, but that's not, again, that's,
I don't know, I think that was first.
yeah, yeah.
By the time you get to Cougar, you know, kind of ready.
Well, and I think that, yeah, I think that my colleague is referring to, we're trying to get a contract in place so we don't shutter that thing.
Well, I think we'll be late.
Yeah,
So even if it's shut at this time of year for a month, it's probably not a big deal.
Probably not.
Yeah.
There is a lot of winter activity up there, snowmobiling, snowshoeing, that sort of thing. It's in the summer though, it's real busy.
Yeah.
I appreciate, I think the community and everyone benefit from that if you can put something together on that.
yeah.
Hey, Carol Bales asked in the chat. Yeah. You guys got to come up to the microphone. I hopefully, Carol, by the answer to the questions, you inferred properly the question.
Okay. Anything else?
We don't frequently get the sheriff here. We need to make hay while the sun shines.
Well, I saw him this morning. I saw him yesterday.
Yeah. And I sent an email to you yesterday, even though you saw that it pertained to the chaplaincy.
Oh, yeah.
Meeting yesterday.
Yeah, with
Contract.
similar contract with
Yeah, search.
the rescue,
Right.
search and rescue. Yeah, yeah, appreciate that.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Okay. No other miscellaneous. I just will reiterate again, I think that might work out actually better on the animal control.
We're on miscellaneous.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll move this chair back. All right, so, gonna talk about the mental health tax thing. Go through the whole spiel, but, I'm questioning different people about this. So they had a motion put up forth by Commissioner Weber to have this come up on a advisory vote, I think is what the term was. And, I think I expressed, I don't know which day it is now, but one of these days lately, I said, felt that wasn't really a good expenditure of staff time and, resources. But I understand, does it take a motion to undo that one and if it does go forward, but first, does it take a motion to end it? I mean, to take that part off? Is that what it requires?
It would require
Yeah.
a motion.
You guys, do you see yourself doing that? I mean, he's the one's gonna have to do it.
I'm going to follow the lead of the chairman on that. I can argue both sides of that question. And the problem is, going back to my hot dog analogy, you want a hot dog? Well, is it free? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll take one. And when it comes to, I'll give you the example. I did the numbers out again. If I use a fictitious 28,500 4-people family in the county, we collect 2.2 million, or have collected 2.2 million a year with that tax. That's equivalent to me knocking on each door and saying, you owe me $77. The principle behind that example is that we keep asking for things. Are we willing to pay the fare? When it's couched in the way it is, little increments or this or that, it's hidden. We don't know. When we get the money from the federal government, which prints it and does that, and we spend it not realizing that it's equivalent to taking from our kids or grandkids in the future. It's equivalent to taking from the neighbors. So the question is, are you willing at this point in time to give us almost $80 a year. And I would guess the majority of people would vote no. No, you can't have $80. Yet they might vote for the tax. And I don't know how to argue one way or the other. I want to hear from the people. If they truly want to do that and willing to pay for it, then that's their money. So I say, okay, but I think they're willing to pay for it with someone else's money is a suspicion I have.
All right, well, I guess I gotta keep going. Another year. God dang. And a year after that. All right, you guys are gonna cut out my work for me now. I've heard this other tax mentioned today, just now, from Gina. Behavioral health tax, is that another tax or is that
It's
the
the
same
same
thing
one.
as the mental health tax?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, well, there's a little less work for me that way. Okay, appreciate that. You know, it's a big deal. Gotta keep
Yeah,
climbing.
actually, maybe, Kelly, can you see if Carolyn can tell us about what it costs to
Well,
put
in the
something on the
meantime,
ballot?
now, when you say direct staff to write up this thing that's gonna be in the ballot, or in the voters thing, the ballot. So who does that? What department writes that up? And it seems, and then while I'm gonna finish while I come upon another point while I'm talking, this seems a little one-sided to me because you're using county resources and people and stuff to write up something. It feels like a pet project kind of thing. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. As I solidify my feelings, I'll probably come and complain more about it. I feel like that's what's going to happen. But it just seems like this whole idea of having the county do this work for something that's going into the ballot, that seems a little one-sided to me, I guess,
So you should ask us to float a advisory vote on, do the people want the board to eliminate 10 regulations in the county?
Well, there you go.
That would be the other side of that coin then, right?
I suppose so.
On the process, Tim, I haven't had chance to, one of the things on my list is to sit with Carolyn and see how that all works.
Yeah.
Because you hear her talk a lot of times, if you have then we need a committee for a pro, you need a committee for a deal. I don't, against, and I don't know if that applies to advisory votes. I mean, there's questions that I haven't been.
It applies to advisory votes.
Yeah.
All right, well then.
Yeah.
So we would need a committee on both sides. So I'm assuming you would head the committee that's against.
Well, it's one way for me to get my name into the gosh dang voters pamphlet, I guess,
Yeah. I just don't have the answers to all your questions right at the moment.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So, but I guess the primary question I have right now is what department writes that up? Who
It would
is
be
the
Gina
individual?
probably.
Who, Gina?
Well, in conjunction with the PA's office.
Oh, okay.
Actually, it's the PA that I think has to come up with all the language.
Probably so.
Well, that sounds expensive. Okay. Lawyer time's not cheap. I guess that's it for me. Is this the last meeting for the year? Because I
This
was
is
looking at, yeah, all right. Or I
This is
mean, not
it.
for the year. There's one coming before the end of the year, right?
No,
I thought I
No,
saw
this is
something
it.
on there. So this is it.
don't ask us, ask Kelly.
This is it, right?
All right. Well,
She's the boss.
all right. Well, I want to tell you guys, Merry Christmas. Pretty
Merry
good year
Christmas
this
to
year,
you, yeah.
Thanks for the work you guys do.
Well, thanks for always participating.
Don't go away.
Oh,
No, well, no, I mean,
all right.
Anything else? Okay,
I
we
think that's
will
it.
adjourn for the last
Merry-
time this year.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everybody.
Yeah. Thank you.